I'm always very well. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. Well, Robert and I both have come down with Captain Tripp, so our necks are
Oh,
getting a
dear.
little
This will be
big,
it.
but
Perfect timing. Yeah.
Yes.
we just wanted to save my life for you. But thank you for coming on. It's such an honor to talk to you. And anybody that listens and watches the show knows we talk about The Stand more than Robert. I would say I think any other body of work.
Yeah, we probably talk about The Stand too much. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I see it. I see it over Robert's shoulder on the desk there. The
Yeah,
book and the Blu-ray. Yeah.
and the Blu-ray signed by Mr. Gary Sinise. He happened to be in town a couple of years ago, so he was nice enough to sign that. Yeah, which was
he's a
good.
sweet guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
This is what I love. I just got to say, we have a lot of guests on the show, but the fact that Mick has his own podcast and is that you're ready to go and you sound great, and it's kind of rare in some cases. There's not a
Yeah,
lot
not
of
wearing headphones like you guys, but still should sound pro.
yeah, you got the professional mic there. So.
yeah. I don't think you need to wear headphones. I think you got it down, and it's just it's just a quick thing. It's just so nice. It's not like, is this working or I can't hear you? I mean,
Yeah, or you're talking through the built-in speaker in the computer, and it's
it's perfect.
we've had our share of those guests. But
Yeah.
I had a podcast until we ended it at the end of last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It is still out there, which is nice. Like
Yeah, they're all there. There are like 280 some shows, but after
Yeah.
7 years, I figure mission accomplished.
mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Well, Robert and I have been doing this for about 7 years, so we'll
There you
just
go.
end it
Time to
today,
wrap it
Robert.
up.
Yeah.
This is it. Last show. But thank you so much for coming on, and it's the 30th anniversary of The Stand, and we just have so many questions. But Robert, I'll let you ask the first one because this is like perfect.
Gotcha.
Go
And I
for
should tell listeners that we're recording it on Saturday. We call it Set Jetter Saturdays, but we're going to hold it and release it on the actual anniversary next week for the 30th anniversary. So, but Matthew and I we're different ages, but we actually both watched it live because that's what you had to do back then.
Yeah.
And it was an event. I mean, multi-night event. But to kind of start off, what was the genesis of the project, and at what point did you get involved?
Well, it started out with, it was very successful for ABC as a 2-part mini, which, it did great ratings, and it showed that there was room for not just cheesy TV horror, but something that was based on something like a Stephen King novel, in this case, exactly a Stephen King novel. And so they asked King what he wanted to do, and he wanted to do The Stand. And he loved the idea of there being what they called novels for television, a short run. This was 4 2-hour nights, although without the commercials and news breaks and stuff, each one is 90 minutes. So I had just done Sleepwalkers with Steve, and it turned out very well for him. He was very happy with the resulting movie, as insane as it is. And so he asked me if I'd be interested in doing that. Now, I had just directed a #1 movie at the box office, and there was still sort of a snobbishness about TV and features. I thought I was, I'd written Hocus Pocus, I'd written Batteries Not Included and Fly 2. And so here was my big break as a director of a studio feature film, which, by the way, was my final directing job as a studio feature film director. And
they're all great, by the way.
Thank you.
For real.
So he asked me if I would do it, and I said, "Are you kidding? My favorite novelist, my favorite person to work with, my favorite book by my favorite novelist. I can't imagine what that would be like." And I'd only done very small scale stuff. So it was already set up at ABC. And when it came time to hire a director, King came to me and asked me if I'd do it. They sent over a 460-page doorstop on my porch that day. And so I spent the day reading it. And it was it was already a go project, and I was asked to do it, and I gave a very enthusiastic yes, not well, half realizing that it was way over my head from anything I'd ever done before and going to be a challenge. But if every project isn't a challenge, why do it? You know? So we did it, and it turned into a huge success, and everybody was happy.
Yeah, at that scale, obviously you had some films and other things behind, but to tackle a 6-hour project, I can't imagine. Is that something you obviously you just dived into the deep end of the pool for that?
Well, you have to just go in knowing not only will you not see the light at the end of the tunnel, there's no tunnel. You're just in the dark. We had 100 shooting days, which for a television project with one director is amazing. Dan Curtis had done it with The Winds of War and that sort of thing. But, it was all in my hands. King was around a lot. He'd written the screenplay himself. And it was really going to war because we shot in 6 states. We had 126 actors and 95 scripted locations, and we were just running and gunning every day, which is why we shot it on 16 millimeter film. It was never going to be a theatrical release. It was going to television. This was before there was HD, and we just dove in, and the lightweight camera gave us mobility and allowed us to use Steadicam every day and a mobile crane every day, a remote crane that we could work with. So it made things possible that wouldn't have been if we were stuck with a giant camera and dolly track for everything.
Absolutely. Well, 16 millimeter, it looks great. I know what they kind of feel like they did a cleanup with the Blu-ray.
Well, so that Blu-ray is, I never imagined anyone would go back to the original elements, the negative, go to the expense of that to do a Blu-ray, and they did an amazing job. It's never looked anywhere near or sounded nearly as good as it does.
It looks fantastic.
Yeah, I'm very happy with what they did. I wish it were a different shape, but that's the way it goes.
Mick, I was going to ask you about the pre-production, but you kind of alluded to that. Because it was such an extensive shooting schedule, and like you mentioned, all these states, and certainly it's no small script. Were there like multiple shooting units, and did you have to like jump around like state to state? Like how did kind of the process work when you guys were in production?
Well, if you have a really good first AD, he knows how to schedule properly. Everything that takes place in one location, you shoot that out, whether it's in sequence or not. So you figure out well in advance. There were not many. There was a little bit of second unit going that was done by our line producer, Peter McIntosh. And he would check in with me when we were doing it, like when Trash Can Man is riding his ETV, the 3-wheeler underneath the sports arena. That was Peter McIntosh going that, and I'm up above watching on a remote monitor and things like that. But it was pretty self-contained, and it was very well planned out. Our pre-production on location in Utah was 2 months before we started shooting, and then it was 5 months of shooting, and no, was it 7 months? No, it was 5 months of shooting, and then it was another 5 months of post-production in New York City, where I don't live, but where Laurel Entertainment was located, and they forced us to do that with one editor who had never worked with digital media before, and this was his first and my first experience working with the Avid, cutting electronically at a time where you could only load in a few seconds of material at a time because of the small size of the hard drives that had the media to work with. Not to get too technical and in the bushes.
No. It's funny you brought that up. I was thinking about that, and Robert and I were mentioning that because Robert and I can both edit and things like that, and we were thinking like back then a project this large, it's not digital. You don't just throw it into Premiere or Avid and you Premiere and you just slice it up. it's actual film, and to have like miles of footage or whatever the length was,
God
is
only
like,
knows how many feet
I
we
can't imagine, like, so, like, how do you discriminate and pick it? It's just, it's incredible.
And with digital
It's
media, you've got 1 hour memory cards
Mhm.
that you just keep rolling. You don't cut. And I even though I work with digital media now, I still like to cut and not have unbroken sequences where you do take after take after take, and then you and your editor have to sit through all of that. I don't want all the shit in between. Cut, cut,
No,
and action. Then we don't need anything in between those things.
That's
absolutely. You
perfect.
want the good stuff.
Right.
You talked about moving to Utah, and I remember at the time, I think even hearing before that production had moved from Colorado because of some of their kind of legislature
The gay
rule.
rights
Yeah, the gay rights rule, which so
legislation
I
that was going.
appreciate you and the production for doing that. But obviously, you had some time in Utah to kind of delve into those locations, and as you probably know, that my website, Setjetter, I went to Utah about 7 years ago and tracked down most of the locations. I probably should
Wow.
have just asked you where they were but I also enjoyed the chase. But um, yeah, it felt like you were able to make Utah work for almost 70% of what you needed
Yeah.
for the core of the film.
Yeah, it was really great. We had great location managers, one of whom still works with the Utah Film Commission, and one of them was brought in from New York. And they did a great job. Now, there were so many locations that some of them I only saw pictures of them, and I never saw the location itself in person until we were setting up shop to shoot that day. So it was such a massive production. Particularly, we shot other stuff in Pittsburgh. The Lincoln Tunnel was actually a tunnel in Pittsburgh, and we shot a lot in New York, and we shot a little bit in Maine, and we shot a little bit in California. So, and there's another state somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
but
But
still pretty
well, in
extensive. Yeah.
Colorado, we did
Yeah.
shoot a little bit in Boulder.
Yeah, still
But
pretty extensive. So how much was any of the cast in place already, or was that all up to you, especially all those over 100 speaking parts, I think there is.
126.
Yeah.
No one was in place when I got involved. I was involved that early. Because I was the first person they came to, we were able to really kick into gear together and bring in the casting director I worked with before, Lynn Kressel. And, casting Gary Sinise was something that came out of, I was looking at Of Mice and Men at another actor for another part in the role. And then I saw Gary and I thought, boy, this is the new Gary Cooper. He is our Stu Redman. And he was directing at the time. And so I was with the same agents as was King. And I asked my agent, do you think Gary Sinise would do it? And he said, why don't you ask him? And we offered it to him. And then everything else started kicking into place immediately. He was our first choice and he did it. And then at first, ABC said, you don't need name actors because Stephen King is the name. Well, they were lying because they changed their mind. And so
Yeah, for
suddenly
sure.
the Brat Pack started coming up, and we had Molly Ringwald and Rob Lowe and things like that, who I think did great work in the show, especially Rob Lowe,
Mhm.
who is a huge
Love
Stephen
him.
King. Yeah,
He's great in that. It's Nick Andros.
yeah,
Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah, Gary Sinise, he's definitely like the soul of the movie, and Rob Lowe and as Nick Andros is definitely the heart of the movie. So
yeah.
both of those
Bill
continue to be
Fagerbacke and Matt Frewer, both
oh,
amazing.
absolutely.
And
Now,
Matt brought something to it nobody expected. He's written as a lunatic the way he's played in the remake, but
Mhm.
Matt brought pathos into it. He was the first actor we ever read, and he read the scene with Randall Flagg and the flashlight and the cigarette lighter and My Life for You, their first confrontation or first meeting together. And Matt had us in tears with that scene. And it was like, holy shit, an actor can really change your perception of what a role is when they bring something to it like that. And Matt has since become such a close friend and one of my favorite actors ever, and the actor I've worked with most of anybody.
He nailed it too. I mean, on all the feedback and the boards and things like that about the stand, he's universally loved as that role. Like he's just he was fantastic in it.
Yeah.
And Ed Harris too as General Starkey, I thought was you believed him. The authoritarian was just like, yeah, we're really trying to cover this up. Like this is
And
no
we don't
holds
even
barred.
credit him. He did it without credit. It was a secret cameo. Same with Kathy Bates. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask about those two in particular, since they were kind of it was kind of fun to see. We watching it live. We didn't know who was going to be on. Especially some of these kind of big names. So it's nice to kind of see them kind of pop
Yeah.
up. And they both have ties to previous Stephen King movies as well. So I assume there's a little bit of that.
Well, Ed Harris was a friend of Richard Rubenstein, the executive producer, and he asked if he would do it, and he said, "Yeah, I'll do it secretly." And Kathy Bates had just won an Oscar for Misery and felt a great debt of gratitude to King. And we asked her; she worked for 4 hours, and
Really, that's it?
everything we did with her was done in 4 hours, and she was a total trooper, and she was good. And that role in the book and in the script was written as a man, Ray Flowers,
Yeah.
Ray.
Yeah.
And Kathy was such a great actress. I thought she would kick this ass. And so it's Rae Flowers instead of Ray.
Oh, she did with the cigarettes and the man in
Yeah.
the booth. It was like, she nailed it. I bought it.
So good, yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't crowbar this in. Robert knows what I'm gonna say, but I met Ed Harris at the at an HBO Emmy party like 10 years ago, and I just went up to him and the first thing I said was, I loved you as General Starkey in The Stand. And he was like so cool about it and like, oh, thank you. I don't
Oh,
and
that's great. I
he
haven't seen him since, and he was only on the show for 2 days.
it's
So
amazing you got that kind of performance. I mean, that's not a lot of time to shoot at all. And you
no.
really, really nailed it with these.
And you don't have
I'm,
time to do rehearsals because you're shooting
oh
for 100
yeah,
days. You're prepping, and you can't bring everybody in from New York, LA, wherever they're located, and do rehearsals. So there was very little time to do that. And it was usually on the day when we're about to shoot. So in the morning, while everybody's setting the lights and everything, we're running through it and doing what we can. But Hitchcock said the secret to making a great movie is hiring great actors. And these were people we had to trust each other. They had to trust in me that I was their safety net, that I wasn't going to let them do anything that would embarrass them or not fit into what the movie is. That's my job. And they were prepared. They knew their lines, they knew what they were doing. And the reason we hired them was because we really liked who they were and what their personalities were and how right they were for the roles that were written.
As you're
I love
talking,
it.
it reminded me of people like Shawnee Smith, who is
Ah,
probably in maybe 5 scenes, but she makes such an impression. You you can't forget her and her performance. And then everybody kind of has those kind of big standouts in this production.
well, in television in particular, there are so many anonymous actors that are interchangeable. You can't tell them apart. They're attractive in a bland way. Um, and they can be talented, but they don't bring something to it where this is the character before the credits rolled, and this is the character who's going to have a life afterwards unless they get killed. Shawnee's one of those people who brought an amazing, quirky personality that's very much hers that nobody else could have brought to that part. And that's how we tried to hire all of the actors. These are people who have personalities that they bring with them into this. They may not be their own characteristics, but they understand them from the inside out.
Which I gotta just compliment you for pulling those performances and how you put that together with these actors, because as you know, The Stand is such a huge body of work, and there's so many different characters, and they're just so they all fit the same, they all fit a piece of the puzzle. And in your film, in your series, they all are unique and great in their own way. You know, there's not one
Okay.
character in the 1994's The Stand that you're like, yeah, they like weren't good, or it's just okay. Like there's just a game across the board, and
Oh,
you don't
thank
see
you. Well,
that a,
you know,
a lot.
casting is more to blame than me, but I'll share in the credit. But
Directing, yeah,
you
no,
know,
you nailed it.
when you've got somebody like Ray Walston and Gary Sinise and Matt Frewer, you know, and Ruby Dee, let's not forget about
Ruby Dee,
her.
Ossie
I
Davis.
mean, they were fantastic. And it's interesting, we weren't going to hire Ossie because we didn't want to do the obvious thing of Ossie and Ruby together, which they did all through their careers. But we hired Moses Gunn, who got the flu, ironically enough. While we were shooting, we shot him in one scene and he was really sick.
Oh,
And we had to send him home because he was quite sick and eventually ended up passing away.
yeah.
And so we brought in Ossie to play that part and reshoot that scene with him in it. And thank God. I mean, Moses was great and was again an actor who brought with him an entire body of work and a history and a personality that was distinctive to him. But
Wow.
working with and learning from Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee was just such a great education for a young filmmaker who had the weight of the world on my shoulders, you know.
It's
And great
incredible.
makeup job for her as well too. I think she's supposed to be
Yeah.
106 and
Emmy winning, yeah.
oh yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. She still
And Ray,
baked her own bread.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Ray Walston, I think almost, if I remember, I think even in the book, Stephen King almost called him kind of a Ray Walston type of character, and that's actually who you got to play him, which is awesome. And then,
Such a treat. Well, and then of course we had the character of Joe Bob played by Joe Bob.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
What's stirring in the weeds, Hap?
Yeah.
He's so great. He's so memorable too, and he's on screen for all but like 2 minutes, and he's just. Robert and I were like quoting him before you came on. It's
yeah.
just
Them
great.
summer colds is the worst.
Yeah, it's authentic text, and you want in there.
Good.
We
And
got it. Yeah.
We'd be remiss to say Mr. King himself shows up in several scenes
Yes.
as you do as well.
Often when
Yeah.
he's in a scene, I'm in a scene with him.
Yeah.
Normally, now
Yep.
not with King, but with me, if you see me playing a part, it's because we're on location and we ran out of all the good actors. But it was really fun for me and King, who had a burgeoning friendship during the production, to be able to play parts together. But it's such a treat. King on set is like a kid with a train set, and he's just so enthusiastic and eager. And you know, he took acting classes in college and was in theater and all of that, so it wasn't something new to him. And it's really fun to see him. Though I must say, his best performance is in It Chapter 2.
Oh,
yeah.
good call. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So real quick, Mick, when he was on set, there wasn't any kind of vibe like, oh, this is his baby. Like, you know how like sometimes a lot of writers will be like, that's not what I had in mind. There was like none of that vibe going on with you.
It was 100% supportive. He
Oh,
knows
that's
the
so cool.
difference between books and movies. Will say, oh, they fucked up your book. He said, no, my book is right here on the shelf. They may have made a bad movie, but the book is just fine. But there was never a moment. A lot of people think because I did so many projects with King that I'm his bitch to do his bidding. And the fact is, there's never been one moment in all of the things that we've done together where he said, I think you should do this. Now, there are plenty of times when I would go to him and say, what do you think about this? Because, my God, having access to the creator of this fantastic work and be able to ask him questions of motivation and that sort of thing, to have him there as a resource was fantastic. And there were certainly times when I would ask his opinion of things, but he never once told me, you know, I think you should do the camera over here, or, you know, I think she should say this or something.
Oh, good.
It was
You didn't get that.
100% support and enthusiasm.
That's so nice to hear because this, and Robert, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think The Stand, the 94 is the only exception where it surpasses the original source novel as far as the Stephen King. I mean, there's things in The Stand, and it's one of my favorite books that just they don't hold up well, and you can never. And you didn't include them in the miniseries. And this you just nailed all the idiosyncrasies and kind of what the
Thanks.
picture in your mind. You just such a good job. Like it just holds up so
Thank
well. You know, so it's
Thank
kind
you.
of
We
nice to
did
hear
the
that.
original version of the book too, rather than the
Mhm.
unexpurgated, which would have been, 13 hours. But
Look even more bloated then. But were there any scenes that you either didn't get to shoot or got deleted for one reason or another?
yeah, there were a couple of scenes, and I'd completely forgotten about them because it is 30 years ago, and I've been living with the final project. But there was a scene at a marina where um, Molly Fran's character is breaking up with her boyfriend who got her pregnant. So that was one scene. There were a couple of little things like that, but that was the main one that I can think of that was deleted.
So, and kind of something similar was anything. So this was made for TV in '94, and so
Yeah.
censors were a little bit different. Is there anything that also kind of had to be sliced up a little bit, or were the
Well,
network
the
easy?
the rape of Laura San Giacomo, and there's a little language around that. Um, uh, on the home video, it was restored,
Okay.
but it was a matter of seconds that it was. Rape is ugly regardless of how it's done, and whether it's for motion pictures or television. The rape in Bag of Bones was the most painful scene for me to shoot in my life. I hated every second of it.
Mm.
It is so ugly, and it always is. And in this case, it was as well. And so we cut a few seconds of that for television at their request. But standards and practices, they knew with Stephen King's name in the title that what they were in for. But they told me no open eyes on dead people, a handful of rules like that. And our middle
Really?
finger to ABC was the opening sequence where we push right in on the dead woman with her frosted eyes like this into tight close up.
Oh, it's so great.
As you said that, I was like, "Oh, I remember everybody's eyes being open."
Yeah,
right.
I love it.
Don't fear the Reaper, which the opening scene and titles really set the tone, I think, for the entire kind of adventure
So good.
it's going to
Well,
happen.
it was scripted with that song in there because,
Okay.
as you know, King is a big rock and roller, as
Yeah.
am I, and we were both in bands and all that stuff. But the one thing that was changed, the scene where Franny is burying her dad, and they play "Don't Dream It's Over" by Crowded House over that montage.
Mhm.
It was scripted to be "Fun, Fun, Fun" by the Beach Boys. And I
Oh,
really appreciate the counterpoint that King was going for. But I said, hey, Steve, how about this? And there was originally not going to be a montage. But when I chose that song, I thought we need to build something around this of an empty world that has been hollowed out by Captain Trips. And it's, very much an elegy, and it's one of my favorite sequences in the movie.
me too. And the Crowded House, like the montage of the carnival and the thing, it nails that, like, okay, it's finally all done now. Like
Yeah, a doll in the lapping up on the shore.
oh yeah, it's just so creepy and such a good choice too, for music. That
Oh,
yeah,
it's one of
beautiful.
my favorite songs of all time.
Me too. Oh, good.
And Crowded House actually met with me on Sleepwalkers, and they gave me a song for the end titles that the studio was too cheap to pay for, and it was not much money.
Oh, that's
So
so
now we
cool.
ended up with the Enya song, which works great, and I can't complain about that.
Yeah.
But I screened Sleepwalkers for Crowded House when they were in town on a tour, and they were all for it.
Oh, that's so cool.
And then I use a Tim Finn song in The Shining.
That's so great.
Tim Finn, who was a member of Crowded House.
Yeah. Oh, so
It's
cool.
always interesting, obviously in the past 4 years now, when we revisit the Stand post-COVID or during COVID, when you're talking about that montage scene, it was kind of eerie to us at the time, and then that kind of became reality. It did become reality. And even in '94, we were talking about, are these masks, if there's a little bit, if on the news, if these masks are effective or not. I assume all this kind of came bubbling back to you in the past 4 years as well.
Well, it
Poor
was
guy.
amazing how prescient King was, and how well developed his sense of reality is, even an imagined reality that was decades earlier. And yeah, I mean, a lot of it's not the same as what really happened, but not that much. And had the pandemic been as internationally fatal and universally fatal as Captain Trips was, I don't know how much different it would be. Although we may not have had a devil person and a fight between good and evil and the hand of God coming down.
I wouldn't be so sure about
Yeah, they're
that,
maskers and
Mick.
Who knows?
unmaskers. That's the tribe.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Is there, I always have to ask it, is there one story about the stand that hasn't been shared, or that like it's like nobody's asked me this, and I just feel like there's a good little nugget there?
Well, there's just so much. It was so overwhelming that almost everything was the job rather than anecdotes. It was doing the work and working with the people and just, well, one thing I probably haven't shared before is that there was one day where I had a tooth infection and it completely overwhelmed me. I had an allergic reaction. I was vomiting all day. It was a Friday. I called Gary Sinise and said, "Can you direct for me today? Can you stand in for me?" And he said to me, "Mick, I think your crew would love a day off." And this was, 20 weeks of shooting. The first 13 of them were 5-day weeks. We were in the last 6 weeks,
Gosh.
and there were 6-day weeks in the last 5 weeks. And so this was one of those 6-day weeks. And a 6-day week is a 7-day week because you're doing all your homework and your laundry and your grocery shopping and all of that. So I said, you know what? Let's do it. We've got a 100-day shoot. We'll make it up elsewhere. But we almost had one day directed by Gary Sinise.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. I think they love a day off.
Yeah.
We
So
would have noticed if that scene stood out. I'm like, this seems different,
Yeah, right. Yeah, like,
I
what was
frankly
that?
don't remember what scene it was or scenes because
Gotcha.
we weren't shooting one scene a day. Often we were going to 2 locations a day, shooting out one, jumping with the crew, loading up the crew trucks and everything, and then traveling to another location and shooting again.
What was your day one shot?
Day one shot is when you see the 4 guys out heading towards the mountains with all the snow and the snowcat. We pan down and there's the snowcat moving through the snow. It was just a handful of second unit style shots that set the stage for how massive the world is where they were. And Utah has such beautiful, beautiful scenery around. And there were so many choices of where to shoot things. Even the Flu Buddy commercial, which looks like New York, that was shot in Salt Lake City. So yeah, the first day's work was just showing the world around us and how massive it was and how beautiful it was.
Oh, it's so cool. We talked about the Flu Buddy commercials in the past with the Robert, you did locations for that, I think.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Which is so cool. You got like all that there. Robert, what were you gonna ask? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I always like what do you look back as kind of your proudest scene or moment, and especially in such a long film. To me, there's a lot of standouts, but what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
It's hard to choose. I'm not somebody who like chooses my favorite project or my favorite thing I've worked on, favorite scene. But the one that jumps to mind immediately is the scene where they gather in the train station and sing the national anthem. It's
Great scene.
So emotional and so moving and so big. There's all these people there. And I'd only made shows with small casts and small concepts before. And when Bill Fagerbakke touches when Rob Lowe touches Bill Fagerbakke's throat to feel the words being sung, and his eyes get teary. There were a lot of tears spilled during the making of the shooting of that scene. And I think that's the one that comes to mind most readily. Rather than one of the scary sequences, it's something that really touches the heart, because to make a good horror movie, you have to make a good drama. And that drama is so potent there that that's what springs to mind immediately.
It was an awesome scene. I would
Yeah.
vividly remember that as well, that Rob feeling the singing happening, and the tears in his eyes as well as everybody else's. But
well, to be
that's
able to be a patriot without being a right-wing fanatic creep meant the world to us, because
Yeah.
there are so many patriots who believe in the true ideal of what democracy is. And just like when Gary Sinise escapes the hospital and he jumps over the fence and he lies on his back and he looks up and there's the American flag waving. Look, I'm as liberal as it gets, and I love the ideal of America and what America was intended to be and what it should be and what certain people who call themselves patriots are ruining.
Yep.
And I think it's really important to be able to talk about those things in a fictional way without slamming somebody over the head with a sledgehammer.
That's why we need films like that, and that kind of symbolism in those scenes. It's important to, as you said, remind folks about the point of democracy, and that, it's
Yeah.
okay to disagree. We're not always going to get along with everybody. It's okay.
Patriotism doesn't mean wearing a flag pin and following Donald Trump.
No.
It's
No,
the
not at all.
opposite of patriotism.
I don't remember reading that in the Constitution or the Declaration.
Yeah,
That's how to be a
you're right.
patriot.
You're
So you're
right.
absolutely right. And that is a beautiful scene.
Diaper Don, I like to call him. So
What do you
I've
call him?
probably alienated a huge part of your audience.
Oh,
but
that's fine by me.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think you have. I think you're in good
Yeah.
company. But if you did, we're happy that to shed some of that. But no, that's so great. I just gotta thank you for that symbolism too. That's beautiful.
And it's
Thank
one of
you.
those moments that I'm always like, obviously I appreciate kind of being on television, but people just need to actually stop and not have it on in the background and just actually stop and watch it as a film, because I feel like people miss some of those moments when you're watching it on the smaller screens or kind of electronically. I mean,
And
to
it's
me,
okay because, it's a story being told. And if you get those layers, great. If you don't, I don't want to be preaching to you. I want to be telling you a story and engaging you throughout. And I want people of all beliefs to be able to follow the story and appreciate what it is.
And I also wanted to call out, he doesn't get talked about too often, Corin Nemec, I think, as Harold. It
yeah.
just,
he's so good.
he is so good. And I kind of forget, and obviously he kind of goes through a little bit of a metamorphosis throughout the film as well, but he was able to really.
It was great. And the casting of that was really difficult because in the book, it's a guy who's really fat who loses weight during the course of the story. And we had to make a choice of putting somebody in a fat suit and makeup and all of that, and then bringing them down. We had no time to do anything like that. And we cast a slender guy, put a little bit of a pot belly on him that we got rid of, but you just have to accept this is a guy who gets himself in shape and all of that. And Harold Lauder is Harold Lauder, regardless of how his physical dimensions changed during the course of the book. It was a little more subtly handled than ours.
Say Tom Holland had to do a whole movie with that, with thinner.
Yeah, that's right. And
Yeah.
and did you recognize Tom in?
I remember he's in the base scenes, I think. As
he
he
blows up real good.
Yeah. Was that on purpose? He wanted to blow him up.
Oh yeah, no. Tom and I are friends, and he started as an actor, and so I thought he would be great to have in there. We have John Landis in there. We have Sam Raimi in there,
Oh, yeah.
a handful of actor friends or director friends.
Which I know you like to do, which it's always nice to see.
It is cool to see that. You're like, oh yeah, yeah.
Well, it's
That's what
for
they were doing
us.
that day.
It's for us to be able to go, oh, did you recognize that? You know, the normies don't recognize it, but that's okay. But Google Gobble, one of us, yeah.
Yeah, the real fans do. The real fans do. So have you ever thought I haven't thought about this recently, but it was like, obviously this took place in a certain place and time, and probably was like, well, what would happen, 30 years later if the stand occurred in 94? Where would these characters be? Or would we be back in our usual troubles?
Well,
Yeah.
maybe the 2022 version represents that, but I'm not very nostalgic, so I don't look back much, and I don't bring 30 years past into the present so much. So I'm sorry to disappoint with not having an answer for that.
We're
You look to the
nostalgic for
future.
you.
You're an
Yeah.
optimist.
Well, to the present and the future, yeah, and
Yeah, I
I
like
am
that.
optimistic, and it's hard to be optimistic right now in 2024 when we're 5 months away from an election, but
Yeah,
I'm doing my best.
but the cooler heads will prevail. You think, right?
I think so. I think
Good people step up.
I think once people are paying attention,
Yeah.
which they're not right now,
No.
but once they do, I cannot believe, I'm Anne Frank. I cannot believe that people are capable of doing that again after having seen the results of the first time and knowing how much worse it's going to be.
You'll have
I'm
to
not
explain that to me
intending to turn
someday.
this in, yeah, I'm not intending to turn this into a political screed at all.
Well, it needs to be said. It's not. It's good. Someone will have to explain to me someday how you can ask, are you better off 4 years ago? 4 years ago, we were panic crying, afraid to go outside, and yeah, I think we're better. I think we're better
Yeah.
than we were 4 years ago.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We have to be.
And do you want somebody who is going to now, who has said he's going to be dictator on day
No.
one, who is going to change everything about what a president's capable of doing, and his minions,
Can't do it.
It's 1933 Berlin potentially,
It's so scary. And doesn't it for you and Robert, doesn't it for me, because I'm minor in history. I love history. I love the spirit of democracy and how it works. The damage, the thing that pisses me off the most is how damaging the presidency has become. I mean, it's such a coveted, even if you didn't always agree, there was always a kind of a level of respect there, and that kind of went out the window. And it's just
Absolutely. I mean,
very damaging.
We had a constitution. We have a constitution, and what's scary is the followers who, there were recently, like this week, put out polls that say people who read the newspapers, who watch the news, who are informed about that, massively lean towards Joe Biden, and the uninformed, the people who don't, who get all of their information online, are massively for Trump.
Yeah.
And that's scary. It's telling you that uninformed people are the ones who may elect a monster.
It's so much misinformation, and you're absolutely right. We just got to get young folks to come out and vote, and you just got to
not focus on Israel and Gaza and blame those things on Joe Biden. That I wish we weren't giving Israel weaponry. Again, we're going into the weeds that we're talking about this.
We've given enough weaponry. It's okay to step back now and be like, it's enough. I mean, it's enough.
Give it to Ukraine.
Mick, if you were a pastor, I'd be at your service right now. You're preaching to the choir.
Pastor Garris. But like probably like
nice ring to it. The Church of Mick.
The Church of Mick. But
it's Father
Mick. It's paying attention to what's going on, and I think that's also, not to go back to the stand, but it's reflected in the stand that you have to pay attention to what's happening. If things, I have to have hope that things will work out. We have these highs and lows that we have to have hope that things will work.
That's another thing is the ending of the stand, where we revisit slow motion pictures of each of the characters. That wasn't scripted, but my editor and I put that together, and with Snuffy Walden's music, it's hugely emotional. you see these people that you genuinely cared about for 8 hours or 6 hours if you watched it on video.
My eyes
Uh,
always itch during that scene. I don't know why, but I'm always
just happens.
And it's my wife too, who blew
Yeah.
up real good, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, to see her and Ruby and Rob and all these people who passed during the course of the film, it genuinely tugs at the heart.
it does.
I agree, and the sacrifice is made, and then it goes back. How do you end such a long journey,
Yeah.
versus just a end, hospital shot, which would be fine, to see
Yeah,
the
with a
baby and so forth.
baby.
But
Yeah.
which is fine too. That's kind of the next step and hope. But
Yeah.
it was good ending because you just also need to kind of ease back out of it. And I thought that was a
Yeah.
perfect coda.
Yeah,
Perfect coda.
I'm very happy with how that worked, and it wouldn't have worked if the actors weren't so fantastic.
Absolutely.
You did a great job. You really did a great job. You're truly a living legend, sir, and I appreciate you taking the time. I love your body of work. We focus on the stand because it's the anniversary, but we could do an anthology series on your body of work. I mean, I was telling Robert, we both have seen Sleepwalkers. I'm a little bit younger than Robert. When it first came out on Prism, which was the channel back in the day, and HBO, multiple times in the summer, and we love Sleepwalkers. And
Good parenting, yeah.
And I was always saying that my parents were cool. I was always in the basement, like Matt's playing Nintendo, but I was watching Sleepwalkers. And congratulations,
getting an education. Yeah.
Critters 2 just had its. I think it had an anniversary.
That's
but
35th anniversary was last.
Congratulations!
Year. Thank you.
Years
Thank you. I mean, it's amazing how some of the things that I've been involved in have had a second life, or a third or fourth, or a continual. Who knew that Hocus Pocus, which wasn't a success when it came out, would be the ultimate Halloween movie it's bigger than it's ever been than any other Halloween movie, counting Carpenter's Master.
It's the biggest. Yeah. No, it's huge.
And Critters 2, which there were 2 people in the theater on opening night when I went in my hometown theater, total flop. Every Easter, there are theaters that play it. It plays in festivals all the time.
Oh,
Critters 1 doesn't, but Critters 2 does.
Critters 2 is so great.
And these things come back, even Riding the Bullet, which was probably the least successful financially thing that I've ever done. It comes back. People get what it was intended to be, that it's not really, it is a horror movie, but it's also emo horror. And it's about reconsidering the glamour of death, and people who've lost their parent recently will write me and said, I just saw Riding the Bullet and I just lost my mother, and that really helped me, and it made me feel something. That's what you make movies and tell stories.
You can't get any better than that. I mean, isn't that what it's all about? You're truly touching somebody in their most vulnerable time, and Riding the Bullet's a perfect example, and you were great on that and in that, and it's just, it reaches across. And that's,
well, we'll do another talk.
Yes,
please.
we'll save that for another day.
Oh,
Well, thank you
so
so
great.
much for helping us revisit The Stand 30 years later, which I don't know how these decades just fly by, but
happy birthday. How do you think I feel? I was a grown-up then.
I was almost a grown-up. Yeah, I was grown up. Yeah, so.
Well, you're great, Mick. Thank you so much for your time. Please come back, and it's just truly a masterclass listening to you. So
well,
thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, and it's great talking with people who really know the stuff and understand it and get the perspective.
Absolutely. And I'll be hitting you up for some missing locations that I still haven't figured out. So
you got it.
All right. Appreciate that.
Take care.
Thank you, Mick.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.